Hey, YouTube. How is it going? I hope all is well. I'm just gonna leave this right here for you. And this, my friends, is why you should never talk on your phone in the bathroom. Anyway, I'm just literally burning time. I am not expecting much of a turnout, if at any at all, for this particular live stream. More or less, I'm doing this live stream because I don't really have much else going on. I need to do something, and I just wanted to have a spot. I just wanted to basically do some updates on some stuff like that. There's just some things that are gonna slow down production on some stuff, and obviously speed up some things on other stuff. So I think we've kind of, well, let me take a sip and we'll come back to it. So at the moment, I'm just talking to myself. I'm not really worried about it. That is fine with me. I'm going to surf around here just to make sure other things are still working while I talk to you. But if you watched my last video, you probably kind of know that I have been a busy boy, and there's a lot going on, of course, and this, that, and the other, which, that's cool. But, okay, cool. Everything's working like it's supposed to. So what has been going on, and why has there not been too much progress? For those of you who don't know me, I'm a little anal retentive, to say the least. So I can't let certain things slide. Certain things, like I've gotten pretty good about it with most of the things in my life, but some things they just cannot. I cannot do it. I cannot move forward unless I do something correct or proper or in a certain way, right? It's not an OCD thing or anything like that. It's how do you? I don't know how to explain it. It's a weird ism, I guess, if you will. So what that ism is right now, I'm gonna bring something out here for you. So right now, that ism is this guy right here. I mentioned in the last video that I have affixed this to the amplifier with a couple of screws, and I'm happy with that. It stays put really, really, really well. Now, locally, the screws that I was able to acquire would fit in. Hold on, now I need a pointer. Would fit in these spaces here, right? This area was big enough that I could fit them in there and use those as the mounting points. But it was too big to fit anywhere else. So I couldn't put it on the end here or up there or here, right? So the screw was just too big. So I needed smaller screws. Well, I couldn't source those locally. And as you can see, I can move that guy. I do not like that. And I was sitting there going, okay, I can just use my super glue tape and this, that, and the other. And I was like, you know what, though? The very first time somebody actually dinks that thing, it's going to knock the tape off, and Lord knows if it's going to peel any of this stuff away, the Tolex or anything like that. And I was just like, nope, I cannot allow that to happen. So I am dead set on putting a third screw in this position, and I'll probably put it like right in here and like somewhere in the third, so that way it's still really, really strong. But yada, yada, yada. Anyway, that takes work and ordering of parts. So I'm really just not inclined to move forward until I have this problem situated. And then what I'm also going to do is create a file for myself where I can set this in there, so when I laser out this portion of it, I will now have a template that I can then laser out this portion, and also put the holes where they need to be. So the little piece that comes out will then be able to fit against this, and then I can use that as a drill template to put the holes in that I need, and also use it as a template to drill the holes in the back, in the back of the amp cover, whatever you want to call it. So a lot of that kind of stuff there. So no, I have not cut the, my vanity plates yet or anything like that, or any of my, all that fun stuff. I haven't done any of that yet, mainly because I was trying to solve this problem first. I don't want to jump ahead. Alternatively to that, I have a couple other things going on that are going to slow production on this guy down a little bit. I'm quickly learning. I need to learn how to say no, I guess. I have a tough time with it sometimes. So right now I am being commissioned to provide some placards or award plates, if you want to call them that. So in my area, we have a Piper Cub fly-in. It's an annual thing, and I think they've been doing it now for 40-plus years. Well, the last couple years, I've been providing the plaques that they use as an award for this particular event. I did it last year around this time, and they asked if I would do it again this year. That's great, but that's another week of time that's going to get burned up, that's going to take away from building the amp. And then on top of that, I have another large event that I'm doing on the weekend of the 23rd, which means the week of that, so coming into that week, starting around the 20th, I'm going to be really, really busy getting warmed up and ramped up to do this particular event, because it's literally going to clean out my garage of pretty much everything I own sound-wise. So I got my mixer, I've got all my speakers, etc., going out, and I'm doing this very large show that I'll run on a Friday and a Saturday, and it's going to eat up basically my whole weekend. So my hope of having this amplifier done by the first or second week of August has just been shot out the window. So that's not helping anything. Realistically, this week I need to get the plaques done, which means I do have next week where I can actually do some work on the amplifier, or more work on the amplifier, I should say. And the hope is that I should be able to get the rest of it done. All the screw part that I need, and the stuff I need to make that happen does arrive here in the next couple days. So there is that. Another thing that's kind of shown to be so the last game has not ended yet. It ends tomorrow at 8 o'clock. So about this time tomorrow, I will end that game. And it's pretty evident that everybody wants to see me do a high gain amplifier. Totally cool. I'm down with that. I'll probably do that. So, well, obviously I have to do that now because it's been put into the ether. So I guess I wanted to kind of just talk about the inevitability of that and what the plan is for that. So let's start kind of talking about how that design would come about and what that looks like to me. First and foremost, as I mentioned before, you kind of have to know what tubes you want to use, right? So some people don't like them. I do. 6L6 tubes are great for high power amps. I mean, these things plop out about 30 watts a piece. I am not looking to make a 60 watt amp. I'm shooting for about 50 watts, solid, clean 50 watts. And there's a couple different ways that you can come up with that math, and we've talked about this before, where you take the voltage that you have sitting on the plate of the tube, you square that, and then you divide it by the wattage of the tube, or the wattage that you're looking to get from that tube, and that will tell you the primary resistance that you are searching for from your, I'm going to turn this up just a skosh there. I think that might be a little bit better. Sorry, and I apologize. The wife is doing some laundry back behind me here, so she might interrupt me in a minute. But, okay, so I don't really want to plop out 60 watts worth of power. I'm shooting for about 50 to 55. So in either case, there's a couple different ways you can acquire that same number. And one of those numbers is to start just, shooting at the stars. So if you take, let's go to the desktop. And let's just look at a couple different things. And I guess we don't need to have the background music playing anymore. My apologies. All right, so we're off the desktop now. My apologies. And let's go over here. So here we go. We can see that we've got a 6L6 GC, the exact same tubes I just had in front of me a moment ago. And we can kind of see that in pentode mode, which is the mode that we're going to run them, 500 volts is kind of the limiting value, right? That's kind of like the end of the line. And then in triode mode, you're shooting for about 450 volts. Now, if you do 450 volts and you square that, what do you get? So 450, hold on, let me get the calculator out. 450 times 450 equals 202,000, right? 202,500, right? And then we're going to divide that by the wattage. So in this case here, we're going to say 30 watts, right? So we'll divide by 30. And we should use a primary resistance of about 6750, right? So 66K would be right up in that alley. That's assuming that we wanted to get every single watt out of that thing that we wanted, right? Well, if we do the same thing again, and then we go times 450 and divide that by, excuse me. Actually, I should have put 60 watts, and by the way, it's a real show. It would be 3,375, excuse me. Not 30 watts, so we're looking for both tubes. So a 3,300, a 3,200 to a 3,400 ohm primary resistance output transformer would work great to get about 60 watts out of this thing. But what if I only wanted a 50 watt version of that, right? If I only wanted 50 watts, I can go 450 times 450, divide that by 50, and it would end up being 4,000 ohms. Kind of makes sense when you start looking at some of the older Fender amps. And I don't have anything here to kind of show that. But if you look at like a Fender Bassman that has a 6L6, they have roughly 450 volts on the plate, and they're using a 4,000 ohm primary impedance output transformer. Makes sense. Well, I'd rather not follow the status quo, and I'm not really trying to squeeze every single watt out of these things that I possibly could. So I have a 3,200 ohm output transformer. It's rated for 50 watts. So pushing 60 watts out of it is not the end of the world, right? Like, that's completely doable. It's okay to run with something kind of like that. So let's come back to my hands for a moment here. So if I were to put about 450, somewhere between 420 to 450 volts on the plates of these things here, with a 3400 ohm, 3200 ohm to 4000 ohm, primary impedance output transformer. Hey, how's it going, guys? See, we got a couple people here at least. That means I should be able to get about 60 watts, thereabouts. I'm not looking to push 60 watts, so like I said, I like running my tubes a little bit light or soft. So what I would do is shoot for about 50. So with 50, I'm looking at literally a 3200 ohm output transformer. I happen to have one. So I will probably use that. I'll use these 6L6s because I already have them. Why not? And then, so for those of you who just joined in, hopefully you caught the beginning of the video. If not, go back and watch that the opening. I think it's a funny story. I don't know. Maybe you don't. Ladies probably don't appreciate it as much as the guys do, but whatever. So what I'm talking about now is that the last game, the poll was kind of to set up what the next build is going to be about, and I've decided more or less where I'm going to go. I'm not going to do a 100 watter yet. I'm going to save that one for later, but for now I'm going to do a higher gain 50 watt amp, and I was just kind of going over how I'm going to come across, getting that 50 watts. And what I've already decided is I'm shooting for somewhere between 400 and 450 volts. So if I had 400 volts on the plates, let's just do that math. So 400 times 400 divided by 50, I would end up with 3200 ohms exactly. So pretty much as long as I have at least 400 volts on the plates and up to 450 volts, that 3200 ohm output transformer I have will work perfectly for that sort of thing. And it is an output transformer for a JCM 800, just for instance. So perfect, right? So now we need to figure out how we're going to get to that 400 to 450 volts. So there's a couple different ways to do it. Again, it's just to kind of start shooting out random numbers. So I know, and we're going to go back to the desktop again here. So I know I like using the 300 series stuff, by the way. I like Hammond transformers. I'm kind of still trying to figure out if I want to stick with them or go to Hayboer or something like that. I'm not as much of a fan of the Hayboer power transformers as I am the Hammond power transformers, but the output transformers I do prefer from Hayboer at the moment. But I like the 300 series. It's just a little bit better of a series, and it does have the 50 volt taps for biasing. I am going to do fixed bias on this amp. Again, this is the high gain or medium to high gain. I'm not going to call it high gain yet, but it'll be definitely more than most amps out there anyway. So in either case, I like the 300 series. It's just a slightly better series to run with, and it's about as good as they come anyway. So you can see here that they got the 600 VCT. That's volts to center tap. So that would be 300, 0, 300. Now I have a 372KX. This thing is a ginormous freaking transformer. I mean, it's ridiculously large, and it's an X21 is the frame size, right? I have that in my possession. Now 600, that's 300 times 1.4, so this obviously is going to be solid state rectified. I'm not going to use a tube rectifier this time like I normally do. So you would take 300 times 1.44, and that gets you about 432 volts, thereabouts, right? So I should expect with solid state rectification and a 300 volt, let me just make sure I'm doing the math on that correct. So times 1.4. Yeah, it's like 420 to 430 volts, right in there. So that should be the voltage that it is when it's loaded down. Should be. That doesn't necessarily mean it will be, but hopefully that it is. That's great. But do I want to try and risk it being that low? Because with 420 volts, it's likely that I'll end up closer to 380 or 390 after this thing is biased out. I'll have to check with my other... I have another amp that uses the same basic voltage. And I'll have to double check and see what the plate voltage is on that one. As I recall, it was under 400 volts. So I'm probably going to want to step it up to the next version. Well, they only make one output or power transformer, that's the next step up, right? 81 milliamps won't do it. 173 would just do it. So that's the 376X that they got there. I do not want to use the ones that they have made specifically for a JCM 800 from Hammond. I'm just not a fan of them. I find that using their normal classic series stuff is just better than the stuff that they actually make for the particular amps that you're buying them for. The problem is that each of these tubes here probably need about 23 milliamps a piece or more. And you can kind of tell by looking at this here. So it kind of gives you an idea of what that milliamp is. So 134 milliamps is like total. That's what 2 tubes in push-pull would pull in terms of, at full power, 134 milliamps. So bump that up to 140 and give it a little bit more for windage, say 150. You can kind of see where you start running out of room. But 173 is just enough to do the whole amp. So you kind of want to have a little bit more built in than that. I would love to have a 640 with something like 230 milliamps. That would be my ideal range to go with. That 372KX that I got is 575 milliamps. That thing won't even know that the tubes are there. So that's why I say it's kind of ridiculous. So realistically, that means we're going to have to go to 300 or 650 volts. And the only one that they got, or the lowest one they have at 650 volts, which would be 325/0325, is this guy here, which is the 373EX. Now, the downer with that is it's even bigger in terms of its frame size. So it's, this one's an X21, this one's an X23, so it's pretty big. Still, even still. But what would that net me, though? So 325. Sorry if I'm ignoring you. I'm doing other things right now. So 325 times 1.4. It'd get me about 455 volts on the plates. That assumes everything's working the way it's supposed to, right? I imagine that realistically it would work pretty good and be spot on. So I get the feeling I am going to have to at least order 373EX, although I may, just for the S's and G's, try out that ginormous transformer that I already have. Nice. Hey, Ghost Boner, Ghost Boner, I love that one. Hey, man, good to see you. From 1980, yeah, there's nothing wrong with them. It's not that the power transformers that Hammond makes specifically for these amps are just not what I'm looking for, because I like, again, more conservative voltages. I don't like trying to push things to the limit, and I'm also trying to shoot for kind of a, I don't know. I'm a little more conservative, that's all. And the way that this amp is going to be designed, it's not really designed to push the output section into any kind of distortion. I'm going to literally go with preamp distortion in this build. So it's going to be more preamp based distortion. Not unlike a JCM 800, but I'll probably be pushing more towards like the diesel kind of territory. It's kind of where I'm shooting for. In terms of like overall gain, maybe not quite as much as diesel's pumping out, but definitely more than a JCM 800 would pop out. But the idea is to not have the output section go into distortion at all, but still have a 50 watts of straight up power. That's the idea. So that's my idea of a high gain amp anyway. So there's a couple different circuits out there just to kind of give you an idea of what they're going with and the different ideas. This is, as best I can tell, does not actually produce any clipping. It is a noise gate, and it does work as a noise gate. The PV Triple X, several of the different PV designs actually use something like this, and then they connect it to a some sort of like a FET or MOSFET or some other thing that helps to control some of that, right? It basically just cores out the sound, so that way when you stop playing, it comes to this point of equilibrium like almost instantaneously, and you just don't hear as much noise. It's kind of like a fixed noise gate, if you will, but because it's always in circuit, it works really, really well. In fact, it's hard to believe that the PV Triple X that I have behind me has it, and it does a really good job. But you can kind of just see what some of his design ideas are in his thing. He does his classic. This is a Merlin. So this is Merlin Blendcro. If I can say it, Blendco. He's pretty famous. He's the Valve Wizard, if you haven't heard of him before. And then this is his idea of an ultra high gain amp. Now, I am not one to say that I am well versed at the high gain thing. I have my ideas. I haven't dabbled with it a whole lot, but once you kind of start dinking around with these things enough, you kind of know where you can go. By the time you run 3 stages into each other, like, you've got more gain than you could possibly ever need. And then you get into things like the diesels and the PV, like 6505s and all that jazz, right? Those things are running like 5, cascaded gain stages. It's kind of ridiculous. Half of them are just there for tone shaping, and some of them are there for just like makeup gain stages and stuff like that too. So there's all kinds of craziness that goes on. So that's one idea. This is someone else's idea. This is kind of a Soldano style kind of thing. This one I would think is something that Andy Lederman might be more interested in. It's kind of in his ilk. I know he doesn't like 6L6s, but you can put EL34s in it if you wanted, or 6550s. I think he likes those, or KT88s. Right? You could put in your output section du jour there, and do what you got to do. But he's kind of got this thing going. Whoever this guy is, I don't know, by Dunator, or Devinator. I've heard of him before. I don't really know much about what his whole thing is, but it's kind of a clever idea. I kind of like where he's going with it. He's got the 6N2Ps, and that's kind of why I was thinking Andy might be interested in it. And it's got, at least 3 stages of, gain that's cascaded. He's not going super crazy on each of the plates. He's got a 220K to kind of start things off, and then he ends with a 220K. And I kind of get the feeling this is his version of a noise gate, but it's kind of weird how it encapsulates this guy. I don't know if I'm not 100% sure what the idea behind that is, but my idea is that it's some sort of I'm guessing like a noise gate of some sort. That's my guess. But I could be wrong. I don't know. And I will be doing, I know you guys are probably wondering, hey, see, how's it going, my man? I was kind of that way too. As I got older, I kind of started liking more of the simpler, more, just basic circuits. That's kind of why most of my amps are like that now. So I am going to put an effects loop in this amp. I am not going to go crazy. I'm not going to do a tube one. Honestly, the effects loop that Mojo Tone offers, that it's solid state. There's nothing wrong with it though. That effects loop is honestly really, really good. It's in multitudes of amps that are production based these days. I don't like that it's solid state in that regard, and that it's literally in the the circuit path, but that's just kind of the only way to do it. There is another one out there that London Power has a design for. I'd like to get just the schematic for it. I don't like the PCB printed board that they got. I think I can find a way to do it just by myself. I don't like the stuff that comes in like the Soldano. That effects loop is horrid. There's also other effects loops that are pretty simple and basic. They do the job. They do what they're supposed to do, but I'm not a fan of tube effects loops myself because they do color the sound, especially since they are not meant to get into distortion, or they should not. Now, the Soldano, one of the big problems with it is that it does go into distortion if you push things hard enough, and it was, that's one of the big weaknesses. I think that they fixed when they went to BAD or BAD or whatever. I think they fixed some of those problems and updated it, but whatever. I can't say for sure. And then this is kind of like an ODS, and you can see the ODS is more or less just like any other high gain amp. It's got 3 cascaded gain stages, and they're not even using a buffered, send and return. That's what the whole dumbulator thing was all about, which is kind of provided that buffer for them. It's just another expensive thing. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to be that simple with it. I'm going to have some sort of a buffered effects loop. Objectively, it's just going to be as transparent as it can possibly be. And as I mentioned, that one from Mojo Tone's not that bad. It's actually pretty dang good. So it just does what it needs to do. And I think it has a series parallel switch in it, if I'm not mistaken. I can't remember off the top of my head. And then I think it is also defeatable. I think I know that you can adjust the send and return at least on it, which is nice. Or maybe it only has an adjustable return on it. But in either case, I'll have that, and it'll basically kind of just insert basically where this spot is here. Now, what direction am I going to go? It's probably going to be more in this realm here. I'm going to be honest in saying that the style that I'm kind of shooting for is going to be more dumbly in terms of how much gain. And I'll tell you the secret to how Dumble gets his things going. They just, I have a, what do you call it? The JCA 50H, which is supposed to be like a Soldano. It sounds like doo-doo. I don't know. It's one of the worst sounding amps I think I've actually ever owned. It's just, it does something that none of my other amps do, but I'm not a fan of it. But the secret to Dumble and how he kind of gets all of his things to work the way that he does is if you look really closely, he's got a volume control between each gain stage. So this little trim pot right here, it's inside of the amp, and he adjusts it to where he thinks it should be, and I think he leaves it accessible to you in his original builds, but he may have gooped over it as well. But more or less, you have your normal volume like you always would right here with a very, very lossy and eccentric tone stack, right? So he does kind of like the Fender thing where he goes gain stage right into a tone stack, and then it's, this is more or less makeup gain, if you will. He uses this local negative feedback loop. I have played with that a little bit. It is actually very effective. I kind of find it a little more effective later on when it's actually producing some sort of distortion. This channel here doesn't really generate a whole heck of a lot of distortion unless you're driving it with the FET channel, right? But it's mainly because all of the loss that's coming from the effect, or not the effects, excuse me, the tone stack. So the tone stack eats a lot of gain, and then maybe right as you start getting to the last quarter turn on the volume control, maybe this guy will start to clip. But with this negative feedback loop in there, it might keep it just from clipping. So it does a really good job of linearizing this stage and just kind of increasing its clean headroom. And then where they more or less get all the distortion is out of these two stages here, which is why this trim is here. It's kind of acting like a grid leak, more or less. It's really all it's doing is acting like a grid leak. But that kind of helps set the pace for what happens over here when you actually do the overdrive drive, which then between these two here, you kind of get the distortion that, Dumble is kind of known for. So all of the distortion is really only happening in two stages. I am not going to be that simple with it. The way I'm going to do it is kind of like my normal things. I'm going to have my parallel triode input stage like normal. And I'll probably do at least 3 stages again after that. I'm going to use a slightly lossy tone stack or a more eccentric tone stack or tone control between the first and second stage. And I will then, sorry, let me get back over here, make sure you guys aren't running off the thing. I haven't seen too many people use the goop. Not anymore. I think everybody kind of feels like it's just you're a copycat and you think your poop don't stink. And speaking of which, you should go read the story at the beginning of this live stream. But in either case, and it's just kind of, I don't even know how to explain the terminology for the douchebag that would do it, but more or less you're a douchebag if you do it. I don't know if you've ever heard of Lewis Electronics or Louis Electrics. He used to paint the inside of the entirety of the amp So he would go inside of the amp and he would just take this red spray paint and just paint everything. And it was his way of obscuring the circuit. And he kind of got some flack for it, and I think he quit doing it. And he initially said that the reason he did it was to, preserve the components in there, make sure that they don't have any like ingress of water and they don't absorb anything and stuff like that. It was a crock of crap. But how does one find a good, knowledgeable amp tech? That is a very difficult question to answer. I'm going to go back to camera view here just so we have a little bit of interaction. I am not an amp tech. I'm not the guy. Brad the guitarist had. I think in the end, it was just kind of one of those things where the guy, Louis, was actually a cool cat. He had a story behind it. It's probably bullshit, but whatever. They worked it out. Good for them, right? But things like that have happened over the years. As you may know, what's the guy that does the Klon? I can't remember his name off the top of my head. He actually used to goop his circuits as well. Same basic idea. It's just to protect the circuitry from ingress of water, absorption, and stuff like that. It is very hard to find a good one. I don't think that's true necessarily because the cream does rise to the top. Now, there's always a 1% club, and I kind of want to do a video on this. Maybe I should, maybe I shouldn't. I had a weird interaction with Eddie Shat 49, or what is that guy, the German guy that has the bald head and always wears the really goofy shirts and pants and stuff. I had a real interesting interaction with him. And I had another really weird interaction with the Science of Loud, the guy from that one. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. Both of them kind of made a post recently, within the last month, about stuff that I had talked about literally months ago. So they were talking about the gear market kind of crashing a little bit. And both of them were bashing on content creators, basically just making the same old content and thinking that, nothing's going to change. And I purposely, I'm not going to say I didn't poke the bear directly, but I was trying to kind of poke the bear a little bit. Because I have a theory. That's all I can say. So I wanted to see if poking the bear a little bit would test that theory, and boy, oh boy, did it ever wake some people up. Both of them made literally an about face, you would swear that their neck spun all the way around, or their head spun all the way around on their neck, with the comment that they came back at me with. And I don't know how to explain it other than to just show it, and I'm probably going to have to do it. But it was just very bizarre for both of those individuals to be bashing on their own market, their own sphere, if you will, and then me kind of supporting their idea in a way, at least what they were talking about, supporting and giving an idea as to why, and then both of them being like, no, that's not how it is, that's not, no, what. But the one that was very interesting with the Science of Loud guy, God, I wish I could remember his name, but I mean, I said something about a 1%ers club. And he was like, there's no such thing as a 1%ers club. He was arguing with me about a 1%ers club. And I just thought it was really, really weird. Because I was basically saying that the little guys, all the guys that are on the bottom eating, biting at the ankles and stuff like that, it doesn't affect them. They're not the ones that are bitching and moaning about the gear market taking a crash. It's only the bigger guys that are like, I'm noticing this, or, what do I got to do to make you happy so we can get that, right? I have not seen his stuff yet. Mayan Snikov. I have not seen his stuff yet. I found another new boutique builder just the other day. I shit you not, every other day there's a new guy coming out with something, and they're all kind of they're not any different than me, I guess. But it just seems like I always get disheartened when they have just another PCB build. And that's what this gentleman was plopping out, was more PCB build type stuff, which bums me out, But in either case, arguing with me about the One Percenters Club, and I was like, no, you don't understand. I was like, you guys are in this One Percenters Club where you can create kind of any content that you want. Like you can do what you do, and everyone else is going to follow suit. So you have to lead by example. And oh boy, did that ever turn into a shit show. So I don't know. Sometimes you can't win. But basically, I was told that I'm a wackadoodle and I have no idea what's going on, and that there's no such thing as a One Percenters Club. So getting back to what you were asking about finding a good tech, and to get back on point with that, was that the cream always rises to the top. So there's always going to be somebody around you that is the best in your area. It may not be a Lyle, like a Psionic Audio level of tech. It may not be Brad's, what's the guy from Australia? Brad's Gear Repair or something like that, or Brad's Garage or whatever. It might not be that level of a tech, but there's somebody that's going to be able to do that kind of stuff and do it well. I'm not a tech only because I don't want to be fixing amplifiers. I'm not trying to make a career out of fixing amps. I'd rather make a career out of building amps. Something else, kind of a little off topic here. Something else I saw that was interesting. I watched, there was another video about Bad Cat amplifiers the other day that came out. And they were doing kind of like a tour, and they were talking with the newest owner of that company. And you would assume that the owner of these companies would be the guy that designs and builds and creates all this stuff. And he wasn't. I was kind of shocked. He's a player. He can play. He's not a great player, but he can play, right? But he doesn't actually even... Yeah. Ooh, excuse me. I'm kind of shocked. Now, I know that Dave can do the work. Like, don't get me wrong. I know that Dave can do the work. I just don't think he does anymore. Because I, too, find it weird that he would send it off to, Fryette to do any kind of updates and, all that kind of stuff. At some point or another, he had to have done some actual level of work. But what I think it is that he doesn't actually design the amp from front to back. I think at some point in time, he was like, oh, hey, I got this amp in front of me. I know how to work on it. I know how to, trade these things out. I mean, anybody can look at someone else's circuit and go, I can do that, right? Same here. And yeah, it's a real show. It was a real show a while ago. It's always a real show with me. I'm doubled up even. So this is just in case we go extra long. I don't think we're going to go that long. I've kind of already gotten through most of the topic that I was shooting for. But I'm glad Elon don't build anything. Yeah, no, Elon doesn't build shit. None of them do. I mean, it's just, I find it interesting how there are people out there that can do this, and they're not really the design engineers behind it. Hey, baby. The wife is exchanging laundries. But, yeah, it's crazy how do they live 5 minutes away from each other? Is that what you're saying? I'm guessing so. Yeah, no, definitely. Definitely marketing is king. I'm still learning how to do that. I don't know how to do that yet. I love you, baby. My laundry queen. Yeah, well, that's the sad thing too. Like Martin Kidd, I guess, is kind of a good example of that now. So if you're not familiar with Martin Kidd, I believe he's the guy from Cornford. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Cornford Amplification, which is like a British company. I think he kind of fell out of doing that or didn't want to do it anymore. Now he's the lead engineer for a lot of the Victory amp stuff. He's kind of like the silent engineer, I guess, if you will, in the background. But yeah, people do kind of eat with their eyes. It's kind of a shame. I don't know. That's partly why I build the amps the way that I do. I want them to be aesthetic looking because I kind of feel that pushes people to be more interested in it anyway. And then hopefully the sound of the amp kind of does the rest of the work. I am still working on getting all of these amps done so I can do more of an expose on them to actually show you what they sound like. I know you've only heard like maybe 2 or 3 of them in like a short little some sort of context, but we're working on it. I've mentioned it before. You're literally watching a company grow from the ground up. So I've got so many of these little things I'm trying to do, and it's really, really hard to be good at all of them. I try to make them super pretty. I want to say that's the only thing that really sets me apart from most of the other people. It's not necessarily that I feel like I make the best amps in the world. Obviously, when I say that I do, it's tongue-in-cheek to some degree. The cabinets, I definitely put a lot of work into. That's the hardest part for me to do is the damn cabinets. But it has to look good, right? Like, that's my whole thing is, like, I don't want to just see this black orb that has somebody's name on it up there. Like, I want it to be a work of art. It is an attention to detail. It is bespoke, a bespoke item, or at least I hope it is perceived that way. And, you know, I know that the look of that amplifier has nothing to do with the way that it sounds, and it has no value in terms of its place in the world, but I can't let that part of it go. Like, that's the thing that's killing me with it is, like, I wish I could just build a stupid, simple box, throw my amp in it, and call it good. But then I just feel like I'm every other jerk out there. So it's like, I made this really cool freaking toy, and I put it in a box. Now buy it. I'm not into that. I'd rather, if I'm going to charge the kind of money I am for these things, I'd rather it be in a freaking beautiful box where every time you look at that thing, you go, hell freaking yeah. And yeah, people do eat with their eyes, but that's my other thing too, is it still has to sound good. It better freaking sound good. Now, I'm the first person that'll tell you, like, sound is extremely subjective. What I might think sounds good, and what 5 other people might think sounds good, 5 other people won't. That's just the nature of it. And then, of course, your idea of what sounds good today changes day by day. Like, I'll play one of my amps, and it sounds bitchin' for a week or 2, and then I'll come back to it a couple weeks later, and like, it's not floating my boat. Let me pick one of the 10 others I got. So, kind of getting back to this. So, for those of you who haven't chimed in, most of you have. But anyway, we're talking about a little bit about the new amp that I'm going to be building. The last game that I put out, it's pretty much the high gain amp everybody wants to see. I think it's winning by like a 25% margin or something like that. I think it's got like 30, almost 40 volts or something like that. That game is going to close up tomorrow about 8 o'clock. So there's a few people that did not follow the rules. They did like one part, but they didn't go through and finish the other part. So you still have opportunity to go in there and do that if you haven't already. Because just read the rules. It's very simple. You have to tell me what you selected. And, of course, you had to have put in a vote. Don't vote twice. Just vote once. But you do have to make sure that you tell me what you voted for. That'll get you 2 points right there. It's the easiest game on the planet. And I don't want to do a Marshall style thing. I don't want to go the Marshall route. I like the Dumble sound. I like that chewier, creamier, rounder tone. But I do want to get some more of that kind of sustain with it without copying his circuit. So I am going to play kind of with my own thing. I am going to do my, as I mentioned earlier, I am going to do my parallel triode in the front end. I'm going to kind of do a variation of my tone control that I usually use, which is more or less just like a low pass kind of filter setup that I do. So instead of, I make it so that way one capacitor sails over the top of the other, and you can vary how much it sails over by, right? Really simple. Pretty elegant, actually. So it's kind of like the depth control on like a DC-30 or something like that, like a matchless DC-30, but instead of having different steps being different capacitors, you're just varying how much of this other larger capacitor goes over the top of the other smaller value that sets the low limit, right? And then aside from that, I don't know if I'm going to do, the Marshall thing's been done to death. The only reason I wanted to kind of do the 69 Super Lead thing was to try to put my flavor on it. And I wanted to kind of do more of a head-to-head, not a head-to-head, but just I wanted to build it almost exactly the same circuit as he did, just to kind of show the difference. AC, take care, man. Don't work too hard, huh? I just wanted to show the differences, but then he went with the 6N2P kind of route with it, and that's when I was just like, well, there's no point anymore, because I'm not doing the rare tubes. I'm sorry. I think I get pushed back on it all the time because people do swear on their grandmother's grave about, these new old stock tubes and stuff like that. But when they're gone, and there's no guarantee that any one of them will be good. So you might have to buy 10 6N2Ps to find 5 good ones, or, maybe 8 good ones out of that 10. Most people, I think, because it's kind of a new fad, the 6N2Ps, that is, I think it's up and coming, I guess, if you will. They're like the newfound, golden child. But when they're gone, they're gone. And in 20 years from now, I can guarantee, I mean, yeah, sure, they lasted 50 years to still work today, but 2-Rock is very similar to Dumble. I was trying to say similar and Dumble in the same. Anyway, 2-Rock all day up and down is basically just a copy of the idea of what Dumble was doing. Now, it might not be an exact copy of a Dumble circuit, but it's using that topology as kind of its jumping point. They're going to tell you every day, all day, that it's not a Dumble. No. But when you get down to the brass tacks, it's pretty much what they're doing. I mean, they went so far as to even initially start building their turret boards off of like the door skins. So when I was a kid, anyway, doors were not made out of this particle board. It was made out of these like really thin, like door skins. It was like literally like 1/8-inch plywood or whatever. And that's what they were using, was like that stuff that they put up on the walls or used on doors and stuff as the turret board. It was wood. Well, Dumble did that sort of thing as well. He had a couple different things that he was using, but whether they tell you it's a Dumble-inspired amp or not, they all are. That's their whole name of their game. And I don't like being a direct copy. I like taking inspiration just like the next guy, but I feel like I'm throwing in my own ideas enough that it really goes off in another direction. Like my 18-watt design, there's actually, I didn't find out until after I naturally came to my design that there's another one out there that's very, very similar to it. It's pretty much anything that you can think of has already been done by somebody, realistically, whether it's writing a song or building a guitar amp. While you may not be able to find it on the interwebs very easily, or you may not know it exists, somebody has already done it. They just haven't put it out in the world already or yet. So there's nothing I'm doing that's truly unique anyway. So at least I don't feel so. But it is kind of my own little flavor. I think the only thing that really separates me from most of the other guys is that I'm a little more conservative, which means that my circuitry should last longer. It shouldn't, the tubes will last longer. They're not going to turn white. The paint is never going to turn white and get all burnt off. Excuse me. Yeah. I'm not shocked that it is or isn't Tweed Bassman, but it's an 18-watt version of it, so it probably uses like a couple of 6v6s or something. But it uses basically their plexi kind of thing going, Tweed Bassman, so I'm not too familiar with that circuit. But yeah, I'm not shocked. There's, again, nobody's doing anything that unique. Nobody. They're copying somebody. All of, like, Dr. Z I mean, he kind of tells you straight up, like all of his amps are kind of, inspired by something else out there, like the Jet, his little Jetta, excuse me, is, basically his idea of what a Ampeg Jet would be. The Jet 12 rocket or something, I don't know, something like that. But all of his amps are kind of based off of some other thing. You kind of got to start somewhere. I'm kind of Supro's been kind of left alone, I think, and I think it's mainly because Supro's just how do you explain it? They're a little too obscure for the modern era. Like, they're really cool sounding amps, I think, but Supro kind of does what Supro does, and they're the only ones that really do it because some of their stuff's just really weird. Not that it's bad, it's just different or odd. I think they're one of the few companies that had like the grid. Is it grid biased? I think it's grid biased is what they call it for the first tube stage. And it works, don't get me wrong, but it's weird. It doesn't work very well. It's something that was used more in like phono amps and stuff like that. But so when you apply like a guitar level of gain to it, it's prone to distorting, and it's got its dangers with it as well. No, they're not really country blues amps. I mean, so think of like Led Zeppelin in the earlier albums. That was pretty much a Supro. But I think what they did is they took out I can't remember whatever tubes it was, replaced them with 6L6s or something like that, and then they took out the 10-inch speaker that was in there and put a 12-inch in there, realistically. And it had kind of that neat, wiry, kind of gritty sound to it. Most of these older recordings don't have nearly as much distortion in them as you think they do. It's a lot less distortion than you would imagine. And then by the time you start doubling up or quadrupling the tracks, it just sounds like a wall of distortion because you've got so many different tracks that are kind of building on top of each other. The harmonic content just boils up. It's a neat trick if you want to get some definition out of your recordings, especially when you're doing like high, heavier stuff, and it just kind of sounds really mushy. Clean up the amp a little bit, and you'll be surprised. It on its own, obviously, it won't have the level of saturation that you want, but by the time you start adding 3 or 4 more versions of it, and you start panning them left and right, it'll start to richen up a little bit, and it'll actually sound a little bit more distorted than it does naturally. It's an interesting concept. It works really well, though. And I'm not talking like crazy clean. Like, you're not going to go from super saturated to, something clean, but you just knock it back a little bit so it's just not as distorted. More or less, you go for the point where it just starts to get more articulate and clean like you want it to, or, you know what I mean? Like, it's just a little bit, so it doesn't have quite the hair that you want, so you knock it back a little bit, and then when you layer everything up, that's when it gets it back to where you want it. Yeah, tape is definitely, it's got its little thing that it does as well, no doubt. And I'm a fan too of getting it right from the source. I mean, I'm not much of a studio engineer. I was more of a live sound engineer, so I don't always get to tell. I'm not going to tell the guitarist on the stage like, dude, it's a savage mess of bullshit. Like, do this, that, and the other. I was never big on telling a guitarist like, dude, you've got so much bass in your guitar rig. There's nothing I can do with it. It was just, how do I work around it? So you either move the mic off of the cabinet a little bit to try to reduce the proximity effect, or you put it literally right up the middle of the cone to try to make it so you get all the highs that you possibly can grab, or you use a different microphone. Whatever it took, I would do it that way before I would go and be like, hey dude, I need some help here. Can you roll back the bass, or can you do this just a little bit? Usually I'd get them when, like the snare would never stop rattling. Every time they played and the snare rattled all the high hell, I'd be like, bro, that's in everything, right? That would generally get them to work with me if I needed them to. It's just like cupping the mic too. Oh, I have a million of them. I've been around a while. So, most people, when they sing, they hold the mic out like this and they're like, yeah, yada, yada, yada. Well, and then you get like the rappers and stuff like that cup it, or the heavy metal guys, and they cup it, and it's just more prone to feeding back. And what it's doing is it's turning the mic into an omnidirectional tool. And omnidirectional means that it's going to feed back because there's no rejection zones anymore. Sounds like ass too. So I would tell him, when I needed him to not do that, I would say, a microphone is kind of like an ice cream cone, not a penis. That would usually get him to stop for about 2 minutes. No, not enough. It's about the feel in the room, though. So I do understand that. Like, having some amount of bass in the guitar definitely is it's pleasant. It's more fun to play because you kind of feel that thump and bump. But that is kind of the part that a lot of players don't realize is how much it steps over the bass guitar's role. If you listen closely to a lot of rock, especially rock and metal, the bass really isn't that prominent. It's meant to kind of turn into one with the guitar, in a sense, by extending the range out. Now, there's obviously a little bit of character that comes into play, but that was always my thing is if you can hear the bass clear as day, you've got too much of it, but you should definitely know that there's no bass when you turn it off. That's the trick that I always used. I like having a full sounding guitar just as much as the next guy, but I think that's kind of what hurts a lot of guitar players is when they hear their guitar in the room, they're trying to imagine what it would sound like as if there was a bassist with them already kind of together, not realizing how that sound that you hear on the albums was actually created, which is by cutting a lot of the low end out of the guitar and then using the bass to kind of meld and extend that range out. Put a gate to the kick. Yeah, I tried that in the past. I have done that trick. I kind of just got over dealing with it. I don't like using gates. I don't like using, things like that on drums or on bass guitars. It just, to me, like, you're always tinkering with them because if you have a musician that's already bad enough where you're having to do that kind of stuff, their consistency isn't going to be very good anyway. Which means that by the time you get the gate set up just right for one song, the next song, Lord knows where they're going to be. And then you're going to end up playing with this gate the whole damn time. Because gates are really not set and forget kind of tools. They're really kind of, song to song, they're going to be a little bit different. And I got tired of dealing with it. So I just kind of found that I just compressed the ever-living hell out of them. So I'll squash the bass so they have like this much dynamic range. So no matter how loud or quiet they play, they always sound like they're right freaking there. And that's how I would get around that. Now, as far as them syncing up, not much I could do about that. But that was the trick I would do when I came into those types of situations. I'm a brutalist, though. Maybe I'm just good enough. I don't know. I've been pretty lucky over the years, I guess. I've gotten to work with. There's nothing better than walking up to the stage and having the band just know exactly what they need to do. You put all the mics up and you're like, okay, guys, let's do this. And like within 30 seconds, like, oh, this is going to be freaking killer. Like they're already dialed or they've already done the adjustments that they need within that first 30 seconds of playing together to know what they need to do. And it's just glorious when you get those types of artists that are that good at it. And then you get those other ones where it's like there's no helping them whatsoever. It's like it doesn't matter how good of an engineer I am, I cannot fix you. That happens a lot too. I can't say I've had to, but there have been many instances where I have wanted to duck down below the level of the mixing desk because I didn't want anybody looking at me going, ugh. Okay, yeah. Yeah, that's a trick too. That works. That's kind of how I would do it for myself. So I used to play in a rock band or whatnot. So yeah, I didn't like multi-channel amps because my big thing about multi-channel amps is that the clean channel never sounds like the heavy gain channel, right? Like they always sound like these two completely different amps, right? Yeah, no, those community kind of gigs, yeah, those are always a challenge. But so yeah, I just would go with a single channel amp, and I would set it up so that when the volume was all the way up, I had my lead tone. If I wanted crunch, I'd roll it down just a little bit. And if I needed it to be on edge of breakup, I would just turn it down that little bit much more, that little bit more. And I think that's kind of why the treble bleed kind of thing became a huge deal, because my only downer, it was by the time you get it clean enough to be edge of breakup, it was usually a little darker than I wanted it to be. Obviously, the guys that really, really dialed in their treble bleeds on their volume pots kind of win the game there. But I usually, when I was writing the music, I would just write the music to be one level. It was full go. I wish I was a man of culture. I'm evil. For me, because a lot of the gigs I would do, I would run monitors from front of house, which is not the ideal way to do it. And I finally got to a point in my career where I was just like, I'm just tired of trying to second guess people. So I quit second guessing them. And lo and behold, life got a lot easier as a sound engineer from that point on, because I just realized that if they don't tell me what they want, they're not going to get anything. So it's always great when somebody's like, hey, man, can I get just a little bit of guitar over here? Like, it's almost there. It's like you almost got it dialed. And I'm like, yeah, no, that's great that you only want just a little bit, because he wasn't in there at all anyway. So you just turn it up a little bit, and you're like, yeah, it's perfect. And then, you just kind of get to this point where you realize it's like, oh, if they want it, they'll ask for it. So I'm not going to give it to them unless they do. Changes the game. Because less is more when it comes to monitoring. I hate monitors, by the way. And I'm a musician. In my rock band, we only used one monitor. It was for the singer only. If I was too quiet on stage, I'd let the sound guy out front deal with it, because I could hear myself at a whisper. It was kind of, I don't know. I'm horrible that way. I don't know if front of house engineers really liked it that much, because I didn't blend very well. The drummer was always louder than me. I could hear the vocals clear as day through the monitors all the time. And, I was just, if I could hear myself, I have a rule, and I basically would, because I'd get musicians that come up and they'd ask me, like, how loud should we be? And I was like, well, if you can hear yourself at all, you're already too loud. And they just kind of like, what? I was like, just apply that logic, right? Like, if all you can hear is yourself and you need more bass, then maybe you're just too loud, right? So use that logic. Like, what do you need? And subtract from there, if it's too loud. Sometimes people got it, some people didn't. It's time for a Red Bull, everybody. Party on, Wayne. So I think we've gotten through just about all the conversation I had anticipated getting through. I'm shocked that we made it over an hour, to be honest. I don't know if you guys have any more pointed questions or not. I do love this, this go back and forth here. It's always nice to have other sound, related people in there. Andrew, it does. Are you subscribed by the way, Andrew? Just curious. I don't know if you're in the know, but you can win an amp. And if you go through the series, if you don't know at all what I'm talking about, you can get an idea of what it is. Include in amps something like a cab clone. Okay, cool. I'm glad. And I have to go through all of my stuff to see who's got points and stuff like that for the giveaway. But if you haven't already gotten some points, do so. Make sure you get in this game that's going on right now. It ends tomorrow. It ends tomorrow at like 8 o'clock, so about 24 hours from now. So if you'll find on my page, there's a post in the post section. I have a poll that you can enter into. It's worth 2 points. 2 points right now is as good as gold. Okay, yeah, good. I don't see a lot of people all the time, so I apologize if I didn't recognize you initially. Now that I see you, I'm sure to in the future. So thank you so much for coming. I appreciate that, and good luck on winning the amp. I haven't done all the math on it yet, but I ordered the tickets today, so they should be here, I think, on Wednesday or something like that. I think after August, I should have the amp finally done. I'm hoping it'll be done before the end of the month. I just won't be able to really do much content on it until September. But so in September, we'll do more of the sound samples of it. We'll do more of the B-roll marketing kind of stuff, to make it look pretty and sound pretty and all that fun jazz. And then we'll start ramping up for the actual giveaway or raffle portion of it, or whatever you want to call it. I have ordered the blower as well. Mr. Internet Money, John, there you are. I was wondering when you're going to pop in. It's crazy. I don't do a whole lot of these lives. I need to. It kind of seems like the future. And I love the interaction a hell of a lot more. Okay. You do that, Internet Money. You do that. Get to work, John. Don't get in trouble for me. I know how the military guys are. But I need to start doing more lives, I guess. I just love this interaction a little bit more. It's just more fun to me than just doing a video. And I don't know, whatever. I'm just goofy in that regard, I guess. It's just easier to be on the fly. Because usually when I'm doing the video, I'm like literally talking to myself, and I'm always thinking ahead of myself. And so I always trip up on words, which sucks. I hate trying to. I don't like redoing things more than once, and I don't mind being candid, and I don't mind flubbing it up in real time. It's just when you're recording stuff, you want it to be good. So I'll record the same thing like 3 or 4 times. And I'll take like the best of those 3 or 4 takes, and then that's the one that I'll put out. Sometimes I get it right on the first shot. I'm getting a little bit better at that, but when you're doing these live things, like there is no takesies, backsies, and I kind of like that. That's why I'm a live sound engineer. If I were a studio engineer, nothing would ever get done because I would always go back and be like, I can do this better, I can do this better, I can do this better. Whereas the live sound side of things, like you get one shot, that's it. And that's it, period. So do it. So for the raffle, I think I am going to do it live. Multiple reasons. One is to obviously make it so that there's no futzing around, like everybody can see it in real time. Everybody's going to want to be there. I think that'll be kind of the cool thing, too, is that everybody can be there together and chip chat and stuff like that. Part 2 is that I think it's going to take a while. While I may only have like 40 entrants, I'm going to call it 40 entrants. If there's at least on average 3 points per entrant, that's like 80 to 100 tickets. That's going to be a lot of tickets to blow out of this box that I got. Like I mentioned, I do have the blower. And I have the tickets coming. Excuse me. That was a good one. Sorry, I apologize. That was rude. But I still need to create the blower container. And I'm debating whether or not I want to take like a 5-gallon water jug or get like one of those clear, under the bed containers or whatever with the lid on it. I kind of got to do some testing because I just want to see how these things are going to flow out of the box. I'm trying to make it so that the tickets don't all just go and then spit out all at once because that would be a little anticlimactic. Oh, hell yeah. So let me tell you this. I like the Sennheiser 421 for guitar amps. I don't know what it is about the dang thing. It's got this weird like denseness to it, but yet this high end attack or brittleness to it that's just kind of cool. The 421 for whatever reason works really, really well on guitars. I don't own one myself, and it's crazy because I own freaking a plethora of different microphones and stuff like that. I'm like a tool kind of guy. 400 and something. They're like 300, $400. That ain't too bad. That's nothing. I say that like it doesn't mean anything. So for the overheads, I use C214s. I don't use the 414s for overheads for drums, but the 214s for me were like the nicest compromise. And I use those no matter what gig I'm on, right? And a lot of people are always like, dude, the drums sound so amazing. And I was like, yes, I know, because I literally stuffed $800 worth of microphones over the top of you. Not to mention, I stuffed a freaking $1,000 drum mic kit on everything else. So it was like the drums, I think I often have more dollar value in microphones on the drums than the kit itself was probably actually worth. I'm horrible like that. So I do the same thing for a lot of my guitar. When I don't just use an SM57 by default. I have SM57s, but I find lately that I like having the option for a more neutral tone. So I'm finding lately that I'm actually using more like C214s and other stuff like that. $579? That is goofy. That should only be a $300, $400 mic. So $579 is pretty goofy. Holy hell. So, I use like $200 mics on my guitar cabs, which isn't crazy. That's nothing out of the norm, but I like condenser mics pretty much on anything I can get away with. I haven't looked up the prices lately. I'm trying to get out of doing sound altogether. So I haven't been looking at things to buy lately. So I haven't really priced out microphones or anything. Crazy enough, I'm like the drum mic kit king in my area. I own like 4 different versions. My latest and probably most favorite version is Mic Tech, which they're an American company. I think they're based out of Tennessee or something like that. It's not the highest quality mics on the planet, but they sound good. I like how they're doing what they're doing. Their kick mic sounds like a cross between a D6 and a Beta 50, the Beta 58. I think that's what it is. No, whatever the kick drum mic is. I can't remember what they call it, but it's kind of like in between there. Oh God, no, we can't do ribbon. Yeah, right. Our money's worthless. I thought about doing ribbon, but it's for live. That's just a little too risky. Okay, that's not bad. So $350. That's good. That's a good deal. So was it the mini one or was it the full size one? Because the mini one does sound different. And I think it sounds a little bit brighter and brasher than the original. And the original isn't even the original. Or like the full size one isn't even the original. Like the older ones are honestly super duper sweet. Another mic that I like a lot, and they use them a lot on horns. They work really, really good on horns, is like the RE20. I think PV made that, or who was it that made that? I can't remember. It was a broadcast mic though, but a lot of people use them for like horn mics. I got to work with Carl recently from the Big Bad Voodoo Daddies, and he uses one. It just sounds amazing. I'm pretty sure it's the RE20, but E906. Those are great mics. The 9 series from Sennheiser sounds great. Just about on anything that they make in the 9 series. The E609, I'm not as much of a fan of. It's just the way that they're meant to work. The little clip-on ones. Are you talking like the 906 series, or are you talking about the... No. The RE20 is like a broadcast mic. It's like this ginormous thing. It's like yay long. It looks like it's almost like 2 of these kind of together. It's nuts. For the drums, I don't like those little clip-on things. They just I've never been a fan of them. I think I have I almost bought a set of like the Beta. It's the Shure. The Shure is the one that's popular for that. Another company that's popular for them is Earthworks. They got those clip-on like gooseneck style ones. I like the way Earthworks sound, but just so much money on some of that stuff. I was gonna get another mic kit for the drums recently from Lewitt. I think it was Lewitt, or was it the what's that other company that's coming up and coming, like the VE7 or something like that. I can't remember what they call her. V7. I can't remember. Yeah, the bigger ones. Yeah, it's a broadcast mic. It's kind of large. So, in either case, I'm a glutton for that kind of stuff, but realistically, it doesn't matter. Just stick a mic in front of something. If it sounds good, run with it. If it sounds bad, change the mic. I've gotten to a point where I can pretty much tell almost immediately if I'm boned or not on my decision. And if it sounds dark, I'll just literally just run. If I had an SM57 and it sounds dark, I'll usually run straight to a condenser mic, and I'll run to like a pencil style one. They tend to do a little bit better with the pencil style ones, and I have a couple of those. And then if it's pretty neutral sounding, but I want more this, more that, I'll just put, my large diaphragm on a guitar mic or on a guitar cab. And if I need something that's a little more closed up and to have something more of your quintessential mic'd guitar tone, then I'll go with the SM57. Yeah, you just kind of got to pick one and run with it. But I like having options. Options are cool. I wish I could just say that, running with SM57s and 58s and then just whatever, drum mic kit du jour. It just doesn't work that way. I like having those options. It is option paralysis, though. Well, and that's why I never got along with like, hey, guitar guy, what's going on? I never got on with the modeling things. Like it was option overload. It's like you can make it sound good. It wasn't that it didn't sound good. It just didn't sound real. To me, it didn't sound like I was actually playing with the amp in the room, and that was the part that separated me from it. And I didn't like it. And I could never get it to do what I wanted it to do when I was playing with the band or with other people, which is kind of where the breakdown went. Like, you really kind of have to just set it up to work in a studio type situation and then let the sound guy out front deal with the other problems. But for me, it was just I never really played with bands where I had a modeler and was able to set it up in a studio situation. I always just played with it in my room, and it's just too far separated. It would sound great, but once you put it in a mix, with the band when you were playing in real life, it just went all to hell. So I gave up on it. It was just easier to turn around and twist a knob on the amp. Oh, yeah. There you go. They still sell those. Isn't that crazy? Like, they still sell those things. And I think you can get the rack mount one still at a pretty good price. So you guys might not be this old. I don't know. Maybe you are. But when I was getting into guitar, like the creme de la creme thing at the time was still using rack mounted stuff. Like the floor, the pedal boards and stuff like that was still kind of new. But there was the ART or the ART SGX line that came out. And that was like the shiznit in the late 80s to the mid 90s or something like that. I always wanted to get that, the ART series stuff, the SGX line or whatever they call it. I think some people still use them, if I'm not mistaken. But I'll be honest in saying too. What was it? What was that line that Line 6 came out? Was it the Veda series? It had a tube power amp that was designed by Bogner, but the front end of it was like a what do you call it? It was like analog switching. Yeah, the SGX 2000. That I wish I should just buy one just for the S's and G's, but one of these days. Um, but I actually thought that series sounded pretty good. I think it was the Veda, or maybe it was the DT series too. I can't remember. I know the DT had like a full on modeled like front end, but it just used like a real power tube for the output section or something like that. But I thought those sounded pretty good. On occasion, you'll get like a guy that really knows how to set those things up, like the Veda series or the Spider series even. Oh my God, I can't even believe I say it. But there's some people that can actually make those things sound good. Some people can make anything sound good, to be honest, though. Like, you just, on occasion, you get that guy. $200? Wow. I don't know. I mean, that's kind of where we're getting back to, is going back to rack gear. I mean, when you think about it, like everything now is a DAW interface. I can't imagine the idea of like taking my amp, like the Synergy or something like that, which does have the whole analog thing, but something like that, and then you having to plug my computer into it to get all the other sounds kind of going. I don't know. My first call, the Spider 2. I want to say it's the Veda series that I'm thinking of. That was the one that was actually kind of cool. Yeah, Soldano. Well, so they're just doing what everyone else is doing, and they're stuffing the IRs in it. And so here's the thing. Yeah, the Badlander made a rack version. Yep. When I was first getting into doing sound and recording and stuff like that, like the whole IR thing was just still kind of new. And you could do an IR or an impulse response of a room and then use it to make like reverb that sounded exactly like that room would sound. Like that was kind of at the forefront. And this is like 20, 25 years ago easily. So it was still kind of a new thing, this whole IR thing. And then when they first started coming out available for like guitar amps and stuff like that, they sounded like dooku, like absolute crap. Like you couldn't convince me. And then fast forward to about probably 5 years ago, you couldn't tell the difference anymore. So if you did a really, really good capture, excuse me, if you did a really good capture and you kept both things side by side, you couldn't tell. Now, obviously, that's not how real life works, but so you move the mic 1 inch, you'll never get it back to where it once was, right? But they got it to the point where the limiting factor was no longer the impulse response of the speaker cab. So now they got that out of the way. That's the only reason I got the Captor X that I got, was because it was convincing enough. And I don't know what an Ampeg freaking cab with, a 12-inch speaker in it. I don't know what it sounds like. I sure as hell don't know what it sounds like with an SM57 in front of it. And I sure as hell don't know what it sounds like with a 421 or whatever, those other 5 different microphones options that they have, right? So you're just kind of spraying and praying, I guess, if you will. But if it sounds good, that's the only thing that matters. And for me, it's kind of like the touch, the feel. Like, is it convincing? Does it feel like an amp in a room? And when you're playing in headphones, it's good enough. The only thing they haven't gotten right yet is the modeling aspect. Now, I know that some people are like, oh, it's close enough, you can't tell. No, I can tell. I can tell. So they just haven't quite gotten the modeling, like, of the actual amp itself figured out yet. And I can tell just by exploiting it and doing things with the guitar. Like, you play really, 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 really quiet, or you roll the volume really, really, really far down. Like, you can do these little things that expose the weaknesses of what a modeling amp does. It's not like the real deal. And there's other things too, it just doesn't feel right. I can tell the latency as well. Like, the latency of just the IR from like the Torpedo Captor X is livable. And it's not enough to be problematic, if noticeable even. Generally, once you get about 5 milliseconds out, I can start to hear it. Which most people, I think, can if they really knew what it was that they were looking for. But for me, 5 milliseconds is about the end of the line where I can tell that things aren't real anymore. I don't know what the latency is on the Captor X. There is some, but it's 2 to 3 milliseconds or something like that. But by the time you start adding that up into another modeler, like even if it is still 3, sub 5 milliseconds, it's enough. It's enough. Because then you're going to run it through your nice new modern era DSP filled speaker, which usually adds another millisecond or two of latency to it. And then you're going to stand out in front of that, another 5 or 6 feet, which is going to add another 5 or 6 milliseconds. Next thing you know, you've got 10 milliseconds, which I know people can hear. Yeah. Yeah, no, I don't know. To me, it's just kind of a waste to do that, though, right, Ghost Boner? Like, taking your modeling amp du jour and then running it through a real power section, it's just like, well, what's the freaking point? Like, you might as well have just had the real thing. I think what the selling point for most of these modelers are these days is most all of the amps that they are modeling are not amps that anybody can just go out and get, right? Nobody knows what a diesel VH4 actually sounds and plays like. Nobody knows. There's this number of people out there that do. That's that 1% club that owns those types of amps, right? Nobody knows what a Dumble sounds and actually plays like. Nobody, because there's this many people that have actually gotten to play through one, right? So who knows if they got it right in the modeler? Who knows? So what's the point of... I think that's the only thing that makes them, what they are, is that you can buy literally 100 different amps that you have no idea what they actually sound and play like. But they're at your fingertips, and you can do what you want with them. And they sound good, because why shouldn't they? They should all sound good. They better. I don't know. That's, for me, it's more like a precursor. Like, how do I really know that I like a diesel VH4 or Herbert or something like that? And, I get the modeler that costs $2,000 to see if I want to buy the $4,000 or $5,000 amp that it actually is. Maybe. I don't know. And what was it? Was it you, Ghost Boner, that was saying that you had a Soldano, or was it the other gentleman had a Soldano that you kind of got over it after a while? I mean, that's an expensive amp to finally get through your, not buyer's remorse, but, you spend your $4,000, $5,000, whatever it was at the time. You sit on it for 5 to 10 years, and then you're just like, it's not doing it for me anymore. Give it away. I'm kind of hoping to build amps that don't have that kind of thing going for them. I'd like to think that I'm going to build something that is, what's the term for it? It has staying power, I guess. Yeah. Well, that's the whole ass end of most of the Line 6 stuff is literally their idea of what an amp could be, or, whatever. I like that they're at least open about it. It's like, it's our idea of XYZ, but at least they're honest about it. At least I know they were in the Pod HD series. They had, like 5 or 6 amps that were just literally... This is our idea of a clean amp. This is our idea of a metal amp. But I don't know. I'm hoping that I build. That's why I want to call my amp company Legacy Amplification. A 31 and a 60. Oh, the Astroverb 16 was kind of cool. Oh, okay. Well, so why did you not vibe with them? I can kind of understand like why the Astroverb kind of wasn't up your alley, perhaps, because those are kind of. Oh wait, a 30 watt though. So this is recently then, because they didn't start making the 30 until just recently, right? I can kind of see why you didn't vibe with them then. Like the 100 watt definitely does a thing. I have gotten to work with a few like real Soldanos over the years. I had one guy that would come in with an Avenger quite often, actually, but I had another gentleman that had an SLO. Yeah. The original stuff was definitely a little more refined, I'll say, during the pandemic. Yeah. I would say it's a little bit more refined. It just did that high gain thing, right? But that's all it did. Like, the clean channel wasn't really a clean channel. The crunch channel did the crunch thing, but it was really the only reason you bought it was for the crunch or the distortion. So it was like one of those things where it was just like a one-trick pony, more or less. And I think most really good amps are kind of that. Oh, I was so disappointed. I saw the writing on the wall. So I kind of knew something was up when Jet City came about. And this was obviously pre-pandemic. 2010, 2012 or something like that, Jet City came about. And Mike Soldano and a couple other individuals were like the big selling points for him. It was designed by, yada, yada, yada. It's just made to a cheaper standard. And it was just like, I think he's looking for a way out. Like, he knows that he can't live off of that one amp or maybe even the 2 or 3 that he was making at the time forever. And he knew he was looking to retire because what was it, like less than 10 years later, he's basically sold off to Bad and has basically exited the market, like stage left, I'm out of here. I kind of saw it then, and that's the only reason I was kind of interested in buying I got the JCA 50H. As again, I just didn't care for 100-watt amps, but it was like, okay, let's see if this thing is anywhere close to what I imagine a Soldano could be. And it was not. I don't know if something was just wrong with my amp. There's currently something wrong with it right now. I know that for a fact. I have some weird anomaly going on where when you turn one of the gains all the way down, it's like there's bleed over from it still. And I know that they use those optocouplers or whatever those freaking roaches are that use optical shit in them. And they don't work. The what do they call them? VLDs or something like that? I don't know. They're discontinued now. You can't even buy them anymore. But it's a horrible way to switch an amp. I'll tell you that. Don't use optical anything for switching an amplifier. It's bullshit. The sensor crap. The crate blue doo-doo that I had that kind of crap going on in it. Pain in the ass. Just dumb. Silent switching, I'll give it that, and nice smooth transition from channel to channel. But if one of those things goes awry, or the sensor goes bad in it, or the LED in it goes bad, good luck. Good luck. Are you guys tired of me talking yet? Because we're going on about 2 hours right now. I'm thinking it might be just about time to call it. I love talking with you guys, but there's only 3 of you right now. I don't mind talking to you, don't get me wrong. But the Hot Rod 50 is pretty cool. I'm going to be honest, though. That was honestly a pretty cool little amp. Mesa, even in their earlier years, I remember the first time I got to hear a Mesa dual rec. It was a dual rec I was listening to. Killer amp. I thought it had this neat kind of crunch to it. Because I was kind of torn between getting a Mesa dual rec, a JCM 800, or the Crate Blue Doo-Doo. Now, I didn't have a whole hell of a lot of money at the time, and I knew that if I got the head of one, I was never going to get the cabinet for it. So when you're looking at like a Mesa, and I think at the time they were still like $1,200 for the head. Like, this is easily 25 years ago or more. Probably more, almost closer to 30 years now at this point. But holy hell, it was at least $1,200 for the head then. And then the JCM 800 wasn't far behind it. I think it was $800 for the head for that. And then it was like $450 for the head for the Crate Blue Doo-Doo. But I knew I needed a cab. And the cabinet for the Crate Blue Doo-Doo was like $300 or something, which was still pretty expensive back then even. But for about $700 and something out the door, I could get the whole crate rig, or I could get just the head of either one of the two. Yeah, it was a fair amount of money back then. But like think about it though, like that was when SLM, St. Louis Music or something, I don't know, whatever. But that's when SLM, which was an American company, still made crate amps. Like that was their last like great thing that they did. So I was just like, and I played all three of them, and it's like I really, really wanted the Mesa because that one kind of did the thing I was actually looking for at the time. But it was $1,200 just for the head. And I was like, man, I can't do it. Like I'll never get the cab for that thing. And the Marshall, which was the next option, it was again same kind of thing. I was like, okay, it's still in my ballpark, but it's gonna take forever for me to get the cabinet for it. Or I can walk out today with this thing, and the Crate Blue Doo-Doo actually kind of did the thing for me. It was like, it worked for me. That's all I can say. And I was just like, I'll go with the Crate Blue Doo-Doo, and, we'll deal with it. And it did well for me for 10 or so years before I sold it off, something like that. I got a couple recordings that I did with it. It sounds decent enough. It was good for the punk music I was playing anyway. You're just a baby. Late 30s. Yeah, I'm 46 this year, so yeah. I've been playing for 30 years now. A little over 30 years. So what I've learned over time is the buy once, cry once thing, right? It sucks when you're sitting there and you're looking at option A and option B, and option B is like the only reason you're considering it is because it's got more value for the dollar. But if this is what you really, really want over here is option A, and you're going to get a little less out of it, I just find it's often easier to just buy once and cry once. Just get it out of the way. Peel the Band-Aid, take out the loan and eat it, work a couple extra nights, put in some overtime, go to the corner and suck someone off. Whatever it takes, just do that because you're probably going to be happier in the end. Because in my case, when I used to just always buy cheap shit, the Jet City JCA 50H, for example, it was always disappointing from day one. I got it and I was like, it's not doing it for me. And then the same thing kind of happened for me in my sound career as well. So my very first mixer, that I got started with, yeah, right, was a little Behringer mixer. And I got a lot of life out of that thing. It did good for me, but I quickly outgrew it. And so it was just like, okay, I need to find another mixer. And I wanted a larger format one. I wanted a 24 frame. So I was looking at the time, Alto Music was still just becoming a thing. And, yeah, the Trainer, there was some good stuff. Yeah, right? At one point, I was happy if I made $100 a day. $100 a day for every day of the week. So if I made $700 in a week, I was stoked, and I could live off of that shit. That was before, I don't know, that was before. Not anymore. Shit, you got to make $1,000 a day just to make it. Especially here in California, let me tell you. But freaking Gavin. Dickwad. Anyway. So I forgot where I was. But yeah, just buy once, cry once, definitely. Oh, I know what I was talking about. So speakers and stuff like that. So I was like, Alto had just come out in terms of like as being a company. It was like half the price of the Allen and Heath, and I was just like, you know what? This is the one time I know that I can get something of good quality. I'm gonna bite the bullet and just get the Allen and Heath, and I got the Allen Heath GL 2400 or whatever the frick it was. Or I think that's what it was. This is a 24 frame 6 aux mixer. Killer mixer. I got that thing, lasted me for 15 years before I sold it, and it still looked new when I sold it too. That thing did great. And then fast forward probably about the time I sold that one off, I got the LS9. So by then, the LS9 was pretty, the Yamaha LS9. So it's a 62, 64, I think it was 60 inputs at least, but 32 channels. So it must have been 64 inputs. But in either case, killer freaking thing. Trainer made great amps always. Ish. They still had some design things that they did that were kind of bad, and then they also did go to the PCB. They did go to the PCB thing at one point. That's when they lost it. Obviously, if you can get any of the original Trainer stuff, though, Canada Fire. Canadian Fire, I guess. The maple syrup of guitar amps, if you will. Not that watered down shit we get here in America. You guys still doing the embargo up there? Not the embargo. What do you call it? The maple syrup mafia, where they ration that shit out. Oh yeah. I mean, it still sounds good. I'll be the first to say, like, it's not that PCB sounds bad. They sound great. It's just the longevity. They don't last that long. And it's mainly because when one thing fails and it gets repaired, it's how many more times are you going to be able to repair it before it's no longer repairable. Most of the time, it seems to be once, maybe twice. If you're lucky, if you don't get something that goes completely up in flames, which a lot of, yeah, right? They're entirely mafia. Quebec. The Canadian Goose. Yeah. Oh, you can't get bourbon? Bro. Now you're stuffed with Canadian whiskey then. You're going to have to get some of that E&J, the brandy. It's about as close as you're going to get to some of that bourbon. That Kentucky bourbon. Oh, man, there's nothing like Kentucky straight bourbon, too. Oh, you like the wild turkey. Oh, you're a hard roller then. That 101 proof? My mom used to like that stuff. Yeah. It's so back in the day when they were making things out of more of the carbon comp, and even carbon film, when something goes up in flames, like it goes up in flames. And that's the only reason I really like kind of the metal film stuff, is it doesn't go up in flames like most of that stuff does, or most of those other options. And when you're already pushing your luck, because, I mean, the biggest carbon comp resistor you can even get these days is, 2 watts maybe? And it's just, I don't know. When they always drift. And when they go up, when they burn out, they always go up in flames, it seems. Golly, I got the Dr. Pepper and the Red Bull burps tonight. Let's go. I don't know if it's just not the same or not. Like, I don't like the noise. Like, the hiss drives me up the wall, right? With the carbon comp and stuff. Even carbon film is kind of noisy. And then, of course, most people go cheap, so they won't buy the 1 watt versions, or the 1 watt versions are just too big to fit in most places in an amp, or most typical amps anyway. So then you end up with the noise penalty. It's not that carbon film or carbon comp sounds bad. I think they sound great. It's just, for me, I don't like the noise penalty, and I don't think they sound markedly better or worse than, even the metal film stuff. I think if you can design the amp around some of the strengths and weaknesses of each one, you're kind of a net zero realistically. I use, most of the resistors I use in my amps are close to $1 a piece. So when you've got 30 of those things in there, it's like $30 just in resistors. It hurts a little bit. So you try not to fuck up. And same with the capacitors. Like, that's why I have to prototype some of this stuff first. And I have hold on, I'll show you. Don't you laugh at it. So this is one of my prototype boards here, and you can see this thing's fucking oogly. But, I mean, there's almost $100 just sitting on here right now, just burnt up. So this was kind of the starting point for the Atlas amp that I haven't really showed you guys much of yet. Soldano and Mesa. I don't think any of that's true. I think they all copied Fender or Marshall. So if you look really closely at what Mesa's earlier stuff was doing. It was more or less just a Fender, and then they started adding an extra stage into it, right? And so like you get like some of the earlier forms of the Mark series. It's input, tone stack, makeup gain stage, and maybe another gain stage, right? And then they went through that weird EQ thing that they did, yada, 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 right? And then you look at like a Soldano. Soldano looks pretty much just like a Marshall JCM 800 with an added gain stage and then a buffered effects loop built into it, right? So I don't think they copied each other. They were all kind of just running on the same principle of cascade more gain stages into each other. But by then, PV was already doing the same damn thing as well. So PV's earlier stuff was literally just taking one stage, cascading it into another and another and another and another. Their classic series was kind of like that. What? I can't remember. The VTM. Is it the PVJ VTM? Valve tube modified, or their Ultra Lead series. So their Ultra Lead is, like late 90s or late 80s, early 90s or something like that, I think. It was pretty much the precursor to the 5150 and, the 6505 or the Triple X or whatnot, right? They were all kind of the precursors to that, and it was literally just taking 4 gain stages and staging them along. And I think at some point or another, they did use some sort of like diode clipping in them or something like that. I could be wrong, but as I recall, they did have some sort of like a diode clipper in there too. But yeah, this thing here has 1 carbon comp on it. Carbon film. And it's just because they don't make the value that I want in the metal film. And yeah, $100 right here, just burnt up. So it's expensive when you try to use expensive stuff. AC4 copy, nice. Yeah, no, easily for $500, $700, even for a low wattage amp. Oh yeah, dang. So the capacitors I use for the power supply are just the F&T. It's not the best you can possibly get, but for what we are doing in our world, it's as good as it comes. Realistically speaking, it's as good as it comes. Now, I would love to be able to use like Nishikons and stuff like that, but the Nishikons, it's a hard sell for me. They're not made for the product that I'm building, right? So they're not axial lead. They're radial lead, if I'm not mistaken. I think radial is where they point out the bottom. I can't remember. But in either case, that's the only way you can get those. So, bust there. And then there's so many different options now. So you've got Zozo, you've got Mallory, you've got Jupiter, you've got Synergy, you've got the generics, you've got IC. You've got all these different model versions and variants out there. Which one sounds the best? Which one sounds the best? Are you going to go and spend that kind of money to do each and every? Nobody's fucking doing that. Orange drops, right? There's literally 10 different variants out there that you could buy. And I can tell you right now, nobody has built an amp with every single one of those brands and built the exact same amp 10 different times to find out that Jupiter is the best one, or Sozo, or Synergy, or XYZ. There's always some sort of brand loyalty to it, and I'm the same freaking way. So for me, I drew the line at Sozo, or Zoso, whatever the frick the name is called. But for me, it was just that they met the quality that I was looking for. It sounded good. There's no debate that it sounded good. And they were at that price point, right? That was the only thing that made it for me. I do not like the orange drops because I think they're too big. Do they sound good? Maybe in certain amps that exploit their whatever. Until now, yeah, right? I don't want to go that route because I knew. So a lot of these resistors at these different, like if you look at like a 2-rock, they use literally 3 or 4 different types of resistors. They've got some carbon comps in some spots. They got these weird red colored, if they're Vichy or something, or some other weird, off-brand, not off-brand, but, like bespoke company or whatever. They use like 3 or 4 different types of resistors. And I think you cannot convince me that they sat there and tested enough things to know that that is the resistor that they needed there. I think it's just literally to fool you and kind of drive you into thinking that you're getting something that you're not. It's, hey, they have this value here. I can get it at this price, and I think it looks cool. We'll use that part. I think it's really what it comes down to, because I have built my 18 watt 3 different ways, and the way that actually sounded the best used the cheap metal films. Believe it or not, not the high dollar ones that I'm using now, the Dale Vichys, right? The CM60s or whatever the hell they call them. Like it was literally like the cheap generic branded metal film. I built it with that, and it sounded killer. One of my clients called it the Gray Goose. And he called it the Gray Goose because he's like, it's top shelf, sounds freaking amazing, and the whole amp was just covered with that gray film on it. You've seen it; it's in my other stuff. You know what I mean? So it's like, I don't know where they build them still. I know the F&Ts are German, or they're supposed to be German anyway. Nishikans are Japanese or made in Japan. So I don't know where like the Jupiters are made. I think they're American. I think the Synergies are American. Right? Like, you just don't know until you know. But for me, it's like, okay, is it the hysteresis in the parts that made that amp sound a little bit better than perhaps my other one? Because I never built each 3 of them exactly the same. It was like they kind of like had the same bones to them, but right. So there's always like the part hysteresis, and you just never know. But I couldn't validate using the lower cost generic metal films. Like, I can't charge $3,000, $4,000 for an amp, and and put 25-cent resistors in there or 10-cent resistors in there. Couldn't do it. So yeah, I when I prototype an amp, I usually just plan on burning up whatever I stuff in there, because I use it once, and if it doesn't work, it goes in I have a whole bin just full of parts that were just used once. A bunch of resistors, a bunch of capacitors and stuff like that. It's not like a giant bin, but of all the different bins I have, it's full of a lot of little parts. No, they don't. Fancy, no, they don't. That's why it's like I had to find that line that was like, this is the end of the line. Jupiter's a little bit more expensive. The Synergy stuff's a little more expensive. The Mallorys are actually cheaper, and there is a difference in the way they sound compared to like the Sozos. To me, they're a little bit clearer, brighter, I guess, if you will, maybe. Not as full sounding. Perhaps some people might like that, and that might actually be the better way to go in some instances, but I kind of like the fullness and the body that the Sozos have in comparison, at least, to the Mallorys that I have used. But we're talking, it's, when you've only got half a dozen capacitors in the signal chain, how much of a difference does it really make? I don't know. Yeah, goop it. Yeah, I could also paint everything as well. I'm not going to do that. If you already haven't noticed, I guess I don't really do a whole lot of gut shots because I don't have, most of my amps currently aren't like finished. So the ones that I have done the videos on, you have seen, and if you look closely, all the part values are pointing up. Yeah, right. That's all I need is for her to have a freaking vagina scented amplifier. That might actually work. Call it the goop. Yeah, that's what I would call it. If Gwyneth Paltrow built or was going with my amps with me. Call it the vag goop or something. I don't know. So yeah, I don't know. There's always so much. There's always just so many different things. So I don't know. I try to make it so you can see everything though. I'm not trying to hide anything. Like I say, there's nothing so original about what I'm doing that it's like it needs to be hidden. I'm also risking that the odds that someone else are going to build the exact same amp to the exact same quality I am and beat me in the marketing and beat me in the the copyright game or whatever. I'm pretty much gambling that nobody's going to be able to do that. Now, whether they can or not doesn't really matter. I think my attention to detail kind of speaks for itself. The Paltrow. I really kind of hope that my attention to detail would trump any of that kind of crap. Like, I'm not hiding anything. I don't need to hide anything. So, I don't know. For me, it's just about feeling good about charging the amount of money that I'm going to charge for these things, because I know I'm not going to sell a whole lot of them. So if I am going to sell a couple, they better be damn freaking good. Well, boys and girls, I am getting tired. I don't know about you, and I'm just about out of my go juice right now, which means I will have been breaking my rule about having a drink of choice within arm's reach at all times, which means it's probably about time to consider calling it a night. So if you have any other quick questions or comments, please batter up. If not, well, I cannot thank you guys enough. This is an awesome night. Yeah, take care, my man. Sleep well. Ghost Boner, thanks you so much for coming in and playing with me tonight. Andrew, I Am was here earlier. Internet Money. We had a couple others as well. Mostly you two, though. That guitar guy, I haven't seen him in a minute, but he was here. Who else? There was one other gentleman I saw earlier. Who was it? I can't remember. AC, that's right. AC. Windsor also stopped in. He ran off too. But thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. I don't know if you saw the beginning of the video. Do tell me if you enjoyed that or not. Hopefully I left enough time for you to read it. But I think it was a funny story. It's not my story, by the way. It's just a story that I found, and I thought it was funny. I picked that story up probably easily 15, 20 years ago. It's been in my repertoire for some time. I just never showed it until now. I am... Yes. If I win, the amp is getting a new name, though. What, you don't like the Peacemaker? I had to come up with something, and I wanted something that was kind of country western, Old West based. And it was just like, I was thinking of different names, and Peacemaker was one of them that came up. It won the vote, okay? You had a chance to vote on it, and there was only like 5 or 6 people that voted, but of the 5 or 6 people that did vote, Peacemaker is the one that won. So, there. I think I'm going to try to make doing a live thing more of a thing here for the next few weeks at least. But the Paltrow. Maybe I'll call it the Paltrow just for you, but just remember, when it slips out of your fingers and you drop it, I don't want to hear about it. I'm kidding. Oh, goodness, excuse me. I think I'll probably just do more live shows for the next few weeks until I can actually start getting some more progress done on this amp. I mentioned earlier, maybe some of you came in and watched it, maybe you didn't, but if you didn't watch the beginning, the big reason I'm doing this today is because I have not gotten anywhere with this build at all in the last few days. I had to do a bunch of work around the house this weekend, and that slowed me down. And I also mentioned that I'm doing some plaques for there's a Piper Cub fly-in that they do annually here in my town, and I'm doing the awards for that this year again. So that's going to eat up some time. But I have decided, I guess I'm going to repeat what I said earlier, but we're just going to do it because why not? Everybody's here. I have decided that I am going to screw this portion of the thing in. And you can see how it moves there. So I'm going to put a screw in. Ow, hit my own little monitor system here. I'll probably put a screw like right in here that goes through the plate here, or whatever you want to call it. And I have the things ordered that are needed in order to make that happen. And I decided to wait on that until I could finish this portion of it before I finish all the rest of the beauty stuff. It's an ism that I have. Like, initially I was just going to glue it in, and then I was like, that's not permanent enough. And then I was like, okay, well then I'll screw it in. So let me figure out how to do that. And then I figured out how to screw this thing in, and it is screwed in there good. It is not going to come off. But then it came down to this, and the screws that I bought are too big to fit in this space here, right? They're wider than that thing is. So I'm like, okay, well then I guess I'm going to have to come up with another plan, because initially I was just going to glue this, and I was like, that's not permanent enough at all. So now I have to screw it, which means I have to buy the right types of screws, the tap and die set, etc., etc. And that is en route. That will be here soon. So this is going to get screwed, and then once this is complete, then I will complete everything else, and then this thing will be done and ready to rock and roll. So in either case, I want to thank you all so much. Take care, you guys. We'll see you again on the next one. Bye-bye.